Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are across the known world, and welcome back to an interview between the roses. I'm Countess Beatrix.
And I'm Countess Lilya. I would like to first of all acknowledge the fact that Magnus came up with this idea and roped us both in when we were drinking with him. So thank you very much, Magnus. We would also like to acknowledge the traditional holders of our land, as we do at the start of every one of our interviews. So good gentles, please. We come together here today in the spirit of fellowship and deepening of our skills, sharing of our knowledge, and the shared interest in the search to find truth through experimental archaeology and historical inquiry. It is in this context that I, Countess Lilya bint Tazir, on behalf of my kingdom, acknowledge the traditional holders of the land upon which we gather. We recognize their continuing connection to the land and to culture, and we pay our respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging, and to the elders from other communities they may join us here today. Thank you, Your Majesties, for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Pleasure.
So Lochac definitely has a long shared history with the Kingdom of the West. How did your kingdom start?
Well, the West Kingdom is game day one, right? And so you guys should know the story, but I'll tell it to everybody else who might not. I'm betting you peers would know this. There was a big birthday going away party kind of thing going on in Berkeley, and the Berkeley campus, of course, was full of rebels, rabble-rousers, and people involved in Tolkien Society and sci-fi and fantasy. And they threw a grand party in a backyard, and the party was so much fun that they threw another party and then another party. And in that, we start seeing the founding of the STA. The first tournament was for a queen. There was no king. It was all for grace and beauty, as it should be. And then as that got on, well, maybe we should get a king in there. And what if we had some knights? Oh, wait a minute. Not everybody's going to swing a sword. The art people are very important. Look at the stuff they're making so we look cool. We get some laurels. And then from there, we get some pelicans, right? And then what really brought it across the United States and then abroad was military. There's a lot of military bases, especially at the time in the Bay Area. We had multiple military bases kind of in the Bay Area, huge naval base in Alameda, a large air base in the Bay Area, another one up in Sacramento. And so there's so many military people that it grew from there. But it all started in a backyard party, which occasionally people will bug the people who live in the house, whoever's living there presently, and ask for dirt from the Holy Land in the beginning and make reliquaries. And the people who live there, whoever happens to be, have always been very kind to us to get the Holy Land relic going. And they're just nodding along because they want us to jump the fence. We're not sure why. They do usually give us a handful of dirt and we call it good. Do you want to add to that, Your Majesty?
I don't know that I can. You kind of summed it all up. That's exactly what it was. It was a birthday party. Grew from there.
So you were saying earlier on, Your Majesty, that there's still some of the initial invitations out and about?
Yeah, some of the original invitations, which are, I believe they're on like pink construction paper, and it says something like, come all ye elves, and it's very Tolkien-esque. The West Kingdom Oath of Fealty is straight out of Lord of the Rings. But it was a very fantasy initially. That first party was a lot more fantasy than our reenactment societies kind of shifted into over time.
So has anybody recorded how the device came about, or is it still one of those legends of the game?
I've not heard the direct answer on that, and I could make a good one up about what was going on in the Berkeley and what the leaves might represent and some other things. But again, that's a little extrapolation. The one thing I have gotten from people early on is that, as Her Majesty said, it really was about Tolkien and many other things and pseudo-medieval stuff. And we got stuck with the name Society for Creative Anachronism because somebody in academia was booking the park that month as it went to a park, from the backyard to a park. And they said, well, your club has to have a name. And that's how the Society for Creative Anachronism was born. And I think our device represents a lot of what people thought was medieval, because people were also very sure that black engineer boots and with pants tucked in, very medieval as well at one point. So.
So where does the Kingdom of the West cover geographically?
It is Northern California, Nevada, north of Vegas, Alaska, and then the far west, which is Japan, Korea, Taiwan, Guam, that whole area.
So
And
where
then
some of the military bases sit?
a
Yeah,
lot
the
of military, but more recently, Thailand has got a really burgeoning group
Yes.
that's killing it. I mean, they've got a site, they're doing things like a permanent site, and they're super into it. It's interesting. And we do have people from Japan, nationals, because there's a lot of mixing in Japan with American culture. And so it's not there, it's a little more accessible. There's a gentleman named Vale, he's a baron of the far west, and everybody loves Vale. And Vale's here all the time. He comes over with cheap sake, gives it to everybody. We do things with him. He's hilarious. He oftentimes brings a friend so he can bring more stuff and use their luggage allowance, because they don't get to bring armor. Vale does, and it doesn't cost them that much more to bring a person versus luggage, apparently. And we have it's a lot of fun.
Cool.
And I know, I know that you have principalities.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because Lochac was a crown principality. How many do you still have?
We have 3 currently. We have the Principality of the Mists, which is the Bay Area. We have Sinagua, which is outside of that area. We have some Crown's Land areas that does not fall within Sinagua that we refer to as the Marches. And then we have Awertha, which is Alaska. And then the far west is a Palatine Barony.
Yeah. I was lucky enough to meet one of the baronesses of the Palatine Barony, and it was such an unusual concept for what we are used to. Can you explain to our populace what a Palatine Barony is?
Your Majesty?
Sure. A Palatine Barony, we also have Alicia as a Palatine Barony, because they do it as well. It has some sort of contest. Sometimes in these cases, there's an Alicia, they have a mixed art heavy competition. There's 2 components, and so generally, depending on who the fighter is, and it's not always the male, but sometimes the female's the fighter and the male's the arts person. It does go back and forth, and then and same thing, and they have a competition, and then that it's scored various ways. The points add up to make a winner. Same thing in the far west. I believe in that case, there's one martial tournament once a year, and then the other tournament's an arts tournament once a year, and then you compete in that, and then the person wins that and then becomes the baron for those periods. So it's not that dissimilar, and it seems to work for those groups, and I think it's an unusual arrangement, but it's been viewed in their cultures now, and it's neat to see the changes that brings to those groups. And I think in a group, especially where like the far west especially is a small group, that it's really hard to have a great tournament there, or sometimes it's really hard to have a great arts thing going on, because people are so transient through the military that this way you can always get something going or making it work a little bit more, and drawing from multiple communities, there's a lot of reward out of it.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it's definitely not something that we come across very often at all.
Well, the principalities, it's also harkened back to the SCA in its heyday. So we right now, like the Principality of the Mists, you can't really get a straight answer why it exists, because it never was meant to become a kingdom. So why did we have the Principality? The reality was we had crown tournaments that were going up to 120 people on a crown list, running them 3 times a year. And you had to have some relief valve or other ways for people possibly to be royal or get to play that part of the game. And so the principalities were a natural outreaching of that aspect of our culture. You see other kingdoms like Caid, they run on baronies, but here in the West, we just went to a more a royalty model where we were making princes and princesses, and we exported that everywhere we went. So to give you an example, Hawaii's part of Caid, they're not a principality, they're a barony, right? Where when Lochac was part of the West, you guys were a principality, and that's kind of how the West did business. And so it's also like how you get training wheels to get a better king is you have that guy be prince or the lady be prince. They get an opportunity to reign and kind of figure it out a little bit. So by the time they sit in the big chair, running the peerage meetings and other things, it's not as difficult because they've had the first half of the job. They've done a lot of it.
So we've been asking all of the kingdoms, what is your premier event? So that if Lochac populace decides to travel and to see the known world on a more personal basis after everybody's allowed to travel, what would be the West's big event that would shine a light on all of your expertise?
I would suggest Crown. I love Crown tournament. I am not a fighter, and I still love going to Crown. There's some of everything. There's a dance competition. There's arts and sciences displays. There's A&S competitions. There's tournament fighting. We have the Roses Fighting Roses, which is, I don't know if you do that in Lochac, where usually after about 4th round, when the list has been about cut in half, you've had quite a few people eliminated, we'll open up about half the field and it's pickup fights. And they'll decide between the 2 fighters, best 2 out of 3, 3 out of 5, however they want to decide it. And then the loser comes and asks the queen for a rose to be delivered to whoever the winner has chosen. And that is just a fabulous way to get everyone involved in the day and to make everybody feel special. I love Crown. Your Majesty?
When you talk about culturally, like what we're good out of the Crown, it is a centerpiece of our kingdom, because not all kingdoms have a everyone plays model. And in the West Kingdom, as soon as you get your authorization card, then are you going to fight in Crown? You're invited. And that's where if you're going to be a squire and you want to be a knight, you start as a man-at-arms where someone's bringing you to fight in Crown. You learn how to walk up to the Crown, introduce your lady. You learn courtly manners this way. We start talking about chivalry. And you're going through this thing where by the time you win Crown, you've probably fought in 20 of them. You've worked your way through a process, and then you include people. And in doing that, also, as Vera said, she loves what Crown is. Well, so many ladies in the kingdom love it because whoever that fights with them, they're part of the tournament too. They're part of the experience. For some people, it's a fancy dress. For some people, it's flowery words. Some people, it's display their arts thing, like an amazing silk banner. You're inviting and including. And as she said, the field breaks down for those rose fights. And then even if nobody's fighting for you, like I've always done a thing for my household where every lady in the sunshade in our household gets a rose, hands down. Usually 2 or 3. We got a lot of fighters in my crew. And then people like Vera, who's my sister, is one of her close friends. I always make sure Vera got a rose. She's fabulous. Why wouldn't you send Vera a rose? And that was fun. And then the thing is, there's these great moments where the squire of out of nowhere beats Duke God so-and-so, and he now sends this Duke packing to his lady to give her a rose. And if the Duke or the knight has any manners, he's going to make that a great moment for that squire and really talk that squire up and his lady. And now they have a Crown story and they're sharing that. And you've included more people in the tapestry that is Crown.
It's a lovely terminology, the tapestry that is Crown. So obviously, Your Majesty Vera, this is your first reign. It's not an ideal first reign, is it?
It's been amazing. Honestly, it's truly been an amazing reign. I have to admit, His Majesty has been so amazing, so wonderful to reign with. He very much has been, does it make you happy? Does the idea of this make you happy? Then we should do it. And so I've gotten to do some really fun stuff. We were lucky enough to go to Australia, which was a fabulous, fabulous war. Unfortunately, COVID shut things down before we could go to Gulf Wars, which was also on the plan. But I'm sure we will pick up at some point and finally get our Crown tournament. We still don't have heirs. So, but it's been a really fun reign. It's been different, but I don't really have anything to compare it to. So.
How did you feel when His Majesty won?
I think the first words out of my mouth were, "Alrighty then," because we were entering for fun. It was not. He had not entered with the strong intent of winning. I mean, obviously he's going to fight with honor and to the best of his ability, but we were having fun. And so it was a little bit of a surprise when we got to the end of the day, but still pretty amazing.
We had talked about this a little bit off camera, but Vera, what I was grateful for is my wife is busy with my child and running a business and things, and she doesn't have a lot of time for this anymore. And so Vera has been allowed me to fight for her in several crowns. And usually sometime late in the rounds, I would go to like a glaive or two-handed spoon and do the best I could to stab you with my spoon, but it's not the best weapon, right? And in this last tournament, when we got down to the semifinals, we let one of the other things was a Tapestry of Crown. We let people from out of Kingdom fight. We had a Duke from Montier fighting. We had a Knight from Caid fighting, both left-handed, both very talented men. And Havork out of Montier, who's also been King of Ganaben and other places, I believe Atlantia as well. Exceedingly talented fight. I was thrilled to get a chance to test myself with him. I didn't fight those guys until semifinals. So there was 3 of us left, and I was here for the home team, so I wasn't going to find my spoon. And I'm like, I would really like to keep going if willing, skill willing, luckily. And she was like, you do you. And she was all excited. And I'd always told her that if it ever got to that, I was going for everything I had. I'm not laying down for that. And so it was a great day. And to see the joy on her face and her laughing, Vera's been there on everybody's court and helped everybody else and been an amazing inspiration to myself. She's helped me on my previous courts. I cannot say enough about how much I admire her. So the inspiration was fully in effect to put somebody so awesome who's been so good to the kingdom in so many ways. That was awesome and lucky for me.
You're gonna make me blush.
So, Your Majesty, Uther, you've entered an awful lot of crowns. How do you keep them fresh? Like, obviously, it's something that you do on a regular basis, and you've won a fair few. So, like, how do you prepare yourself each crown event to ensure that you're, it's still new to you?
So this is not meant to sound conceited. I actually haven't entered that many crowns. It's only more recently in the last couple of years that I've entered crowns and gone to the sharp spoon of doom to fight in later rounds. When I grew up in the SCA, we had 120 guy lists, 100 people lists. It was heavily competitive. So the idea of anybody winning crown or doing it more than once was rare. And I come off a very strong ducal line. My lineage has like a third or almost half of the Western Reigns between my line of fighters, because Duke James Gredholm, Duke Jade, myself, Duke Miles, Duke Alfar, my squires. And I come from a martial arts background. And so I was always trying to find the better Kung Fu. I was always trying to be better than I was. And I was 21, 22 when I started and really got going. And I just found home. People talk about this more so then, but people always talk about finding the SCA, like finding the home you didn't know you needed, or you found the blue pill like in the Matrix. That was me in the SCA. I was 20 years old or 21 years old. I was wild. I was young. I didn't want to get a DUI for drinking and driving. You could go off to this party and put garb on and do all these things. And then at the end of the day, you could test yourself and do martial arts. And so it's never good. Your last performance is never good enough. And so that's how you keep it fresh. You're always, I won in my first kit I won in was not very good. Then I wanted to win a chainmail hauberk in a full suit of armor. And I did that. I was like wearing a period kit. And my current kit that I won in is perfect 14th century down to my underwear that I fought in that day. So trying to set these other goals and the quest for perfection. And then that is what really, I think. And then lastly, I just love what I do. I mean, I've got to fight for amazing women, and getting to reign with Vera is very different than reigning with my sister, who was 18 at the time. And my mom thought that was like having wedding photos. And I got a lot of photos with mom because her daughter wasn't married, but she got coronation photos. And it's just been my life and what I do, and I love it. And I'm so lucky to have found what I was passionate about in my early 20s and got to pursue it. Hope that's not too vague of an answer.
No, that's perfect. So how did you both get involved in the society?
Why don't you tell this one? Your story's better than mine.
So I actually started in the Kingdom of Antir, and at that point in time, every Friday night, the folks at the local college, the Shire, it's a very small town, college town, but they would all put on garb and they would all do dance practice in the lobby of one of the dorms. And then afterwards, in garb, everyone would go out to the one 24-hour restaurant in the area, small town. And it was kind of how they recruited. So people would walk through and see these people doing medieval dancing in garb, and then they'd see them out at a restaurant together, and it always looked like fun. And I remember seeing these people going, I'm going to do that at some point. And so I started college, and I happened to be in orchestra with one of the girls who was in the group, and she said, come to dance practice Friday. And so I did. And that was 20 plus years ago. I got hooked.
For myself, I come by it through the path of almost every other guy I know who fights. I was a sci-fi nerd. I played role-playing games. I one time stayed in a department store to watch all of Robin Hood back when you didn't have VCRs, because I wanted to see Errol Flynn's Robin Hood from start to finish, and you couldn't just go home and dial that up. And so that was my passion. And so as soon as I found the SCA, I kept going to fighter practice. And the SCA can't always be welcoming, or isn't always welcoming, right? I could get nobody to talk to me, but I was going to make me some of this armor stuff and do me some fighting, because I was sure I was meant to swing a sword. And I thought that since I was 12 years old, I was really going to get to do it. And I didn't want to roll dice anymore. I really wanted to do it. And so I kept going to fighter practice. And then, I don't know if you've ever heard of John Theopolis. He's an amazing man, a really great knight in our kingdom. He's gone to Lochac several times. And he met me at a practice, and in his bombastic way took me around and introduced me to everybody. So now I'm not this guy wandering around practice trying to talk to people. And he introduced me to Fabian, or Duke Fabian, and said, because Fabian was running an open armor workshop. And then I went to Fabian's house, and in 3 months I built a suit of armor, and I bought a helmet, I built everything else. And then for me, that was off to the races. I didn't own guard for my several events. I would go fight, and then I'd get out of my armor and I have to leave because I didn't walk around in armor all night.
Nobody
True fighter.
Well, there was no internet then, right? I mean, so if there's no internet, you just can't Google up or Amazon up a pseudo medieval outfit. I really was like, now I got to find someone to buy me to get some garb.
Back in the day when you would get a paper copy of the
Yes.
local newsletter, and it would have directions in the back on how to make a folded half tea tunic, so that you at least had something to wear.
Yes.
My first piece of garb was high-waisted Italian, because somebody told me that was basic garb.
God.
and I went, okay.
Do
That was it. Oh,
So
just
with the age of the West Kingdom, there have been many traditions, and those traditions have been shared across many other kingdoms that have come from there. What would be some of the traditions that you enjoy
In the West Kingdom, or
in the West
other-
Kingdom?
For me, one of them is truly roses. That I've spent a lot of years not being anybody's consort and not being part of the tourney list, and yet there were always fighters that make a point of making sure that everyone there feels included. And sending, people will send roses to the people running the lists, the people who are heralding, the people who are marshalling. They'll all be sitting there out. You'll see a marshal out there with a rose hanging from their belt. And for me, it just captures so much of the inclusivity of our community and why people come back. That sense of belonging. So that would be the one I would share.
Well, I think I might have said roses, but it's already taken. But what I would go back to is the fact that everybody fights in Crown, or everyone's welcome to fight in Crown. And that's a powerful message, because I didn't join the SCA not to be a boy pulling the sword from the stone. We all have that role-playing game fantasy, and we all have that imagination, right? And it's like buying a lottery ticket. You don't really win the lottery, but you dream about all the things you do if you did win the lottery, right? Well, for myself and many people, until you actually win a crown, and most won't, it's the dream of, I could make my lady queen, I could make my lady king, I could wear the fancy garb, I could do all these things. And you get to be invited to be part of the party, and that's an invitation. And you really are, kings go out of their way to invite people to reach out to talk about that. And that piece of our culture, I think, is interesting because some places you have to like send a letter of intent in, you have to be accepted, or you have to be invited, and then you can send a letter of intent in. And I think what's strong about that piece of culture for us is every man on the day can say, that's my king, and I was part of that process, or they were there. And that is a great thing because no one said you couldn't. And if you thought you could beat him, you should have shown up. And it's a cool moment. And I love that about it. What we do, we get more people involved that way.
Definitely putting everybody on an equal footing on the day.
Yeah.
So I loved being crown, but I also liked stepping down because having the spotlight and, you know, like being center stage of a big production can be very daunting as it rolls on. So what do you miss about being just yourself, and what do you love about being crown at the moment? And that's to you as well, Vera, because it is important that you enjoy your first reign.
Truthfully, the thing I have enjoyed the most is the look on someone's face when you recognize them and are able to give them an award for something, you know, to show them that all of their work, their art, their service, you know, their fighting, it's been noticed and it's appreciated. And there's just something so magical, that look on people's face. I love it. I can see why people do this over and over, because that feeling is kind of addictive, you know, making sure people know they're appreciated.
You know, obviously I've reigned a lot, and so I have a lot of answers. For me, crowning my consort has always been one of the things I remember the most. I proposed to my wife on the field. She had no idea it was coming. Me and 500 of my closest friends, bang, asked her to marry me. The ring was the wreath of roses. Yeah. I put my sister and got to see her, you know, tear up, and my mom be part of the game and bring my family in that way. And I actually pulled my brother in, who's also knighted and a Viscount now, and that was awesome. And then to have a close personal friend that you admire and see her light up, and then to see her shine, because I think she, in a lot of ways, is better as queen than I am as king during COVID, because she is on point with spreadsheets and organization. This is what we're going to do, and make it, and then sending out all the right messages. And I'm dysgraphic. I don't write well. I like rattling off at the tongue, and I can speak off the cuff. I cannot write a good letter to save my life. I have to have her edit me, or somebody for the love of God, please edit Uther's letters. So seeing the joy, seeing her shine and her moments, and what she's doing, or any of my queens, those to me are, you know, what really lights me up.
So many lovely stories, and I'm thoroughly enjoying them. I'm someone who really does love that kind of thing. You mentioned that you are the off the cuff person, King Uther, and you do a lot of the administrative things. So how are you keeping your populace engaged throughout COVID?
We're doing a bunch of stuff. Our populace is amazing. We have a lot of autocrats who have stepped up and are planning virtual events. So this weekend is our virtual fall. This would have been fall coronet for our heirs. It's weird. But we have had multiple classes today. I took a class on how to make pasta. I took another class on women in Italy. Like, His Majesty hosted a roundtable. And so people, you know, as much as not seeing people in person has been terrible, the online community that has been created and the arts and sciences are on fire online. I have been to so many different online classes taught by people in Europe, classes taught by people in Australia, and I could chill in my living room and attend these amazing classes and log in and see arts and sciences competitions with people entering from all over the world. We're having a Bardic circle tonight, and I expect that there will probably be people logged in from all over the known world. Every time we've held one, there have been people logged in from other kingdoms performing, and it's amazing, this community that has expanded and the opportunities that people have to make connections even if they were never able to travel outside of their kingdom or their local group before, they now suddenly have a friend in Australia or, you know, Drachenwald or, you know, who knows, all over the world. It's amazing to me. I'm kind of rambling.
No, that's a great answer. I think you've encapsulated it, because the online content and people who have stepped up, and this is, I think, one of the keys to being a great king and queen, is letting your people wow you with what they do, and don't try to direct the traffic, because you'll get in the way. And we have Helga, who is doing her Between Two Peers with Sassy Seamstress and Danger Muppet, and we have Logan, who is doing interviews with knights and squires and talking about chivalry and doing that. And I've guested on those, and it's like doing the talk show circuit a little bit. You're into these interviews and things. And then if you fight, Vesper Alantia and a couple other people are just doing great interviews with different people who are high-end fighters. Some are focused on performance in fighting. Some people are focused on the people's stories and journey lines, and all that content, and then just making sure people have access to it, you know. And then even today in court, we have not been doing peerages virtually, but we have been making sure that people get service and arts awards, because we're seeing a lot of that online. And why wouldn't you celebrate those people who are pulling people together and bringing, you know, making that fabric for the kingdom?
It's definitely brought forth an opportunity to share knowledge and to share skill sets that I think that people previously, before COVID, it's almost like there's a fear that if you show your knowledge or your skills, that you're going to be, especially in Australia where we have the tall poppy syndrome, like where if you raise above the crowd, your head gets chopped off. So like for us, it's giving us an opportunity to actually go, no, while I have this time, I can focus. And it's about that, which I am absolutely loving. But it is a little bit heartbreaking, because being royalty, you feed from your populace, like the energy levels. So are you finding that difficult, being the crowns of the parent kingdom, basically, not getting that like one-on-one feel?
It's different. We have held a Zoom chat we with the different groups. So we had one with each of our principalities, and then with the marches, and we just invited anyone who wanted to come in and have some one-on-one time with us to join us for a chat. And that was lovely to be able to connect with people. I have had a couple of online discussions with my guard and my artisans, and with our court also, just to touch base and connect with them. I get, you know, messages, Facebook messages from people, and, you know, we share and we talk online. And so it's a different type of connection. But I do still feel like I'm getting feedback from people, and it's nice to know what they're up to. I get random photos of, look at this new art I'm working on, because they have the time. Your Majesty?
You know, I think, yes, it is very different. It's exceedingly different. And I have a lot of reins to base this off of. And I'd be lying if I said it wasn't a little harder, because I think right now, and I'm sure you're saying the craziness that is America. I mean, come on, we all watched a little bit of news somewhere. And the level of disagreements that's brought into our society that I don't think would happen if people were face to face, hanging out, doing it over a beer. Because I see so often the people who are mostly agreeing, or like somebody's an 80% ally or 50% ally, they mostly agree, and they're just saying it a little different. And online, I'm just seeing loggerheads, and I've seen some people, and that part has been the hard part of this kind of reign. And that has been hard to watch when you see people fighting online or whatever, and fractures within our orders or groups. But on the other side of it, you have all the amazing content and all the good things happening. And that's what lifts you up. And so what you can do is keep a little faith. And I think faith is a great knightly virtue, and one that is underrated. And when you have a little bit of faith, you can pick other people up. And I got to say, Vera has lifted me up several times when I've had a bad day. She's been my touchstone. I can say that I call a couple of my buddies, and the best Zoom chat, or my favorite Zoom chat I do regularly, is on Tuesday nights. We do the Great Fights of YouTube. It's a small little Zoom group. And really, it's a bunch of guys talking stick, drinking a few beers, and talking smack about each other. And that is just like being at an event. And we love that. And so that is where the energy comes from. And I try to get people to those things and away from the political conversations personally, because that is where I think we all need each other more than ever during the time of COVID and these strife, and to lose people over small disagreements or what could seem big but are small differences is unfortunate.
I'm going to actually ask you something roundabout,
Sure.
going back to your personas. What time periods are you?
So I've never actually picked a single persona or time period. I am a time and location traveler based on my mood. So I have, currently we're doing 14th century for the reign because that's what he's into right now. And he had a strong feeling about it. And I was like, what up?
And who doesn't look good in a coat RD? I mean, come on, people.
Everybody looks good in a coat RD. It is true.
Yeah.
But I love
ermine on her shoulder. Show them the ermine. Come on, give them a little ermine on.
Yeah.
Give them a little side shoulder.
My sleeves.
Side shoulder.
Woo, look at that.
Can't really tell.
That's
it is
beautiful.
Absolutely gorgeous. Hunter green. I love this dress. So I also really like late period Italian. I've done Norse. I've done Middle Eastern because I enjoy belly dancing. Like, I'm kind of all over the place personally. I've thought about focusing, but why would I stick to one when I can do it all?
Definitely the best mindset.
Plus more jewelry, right? It's all about
Yeah, it's all about the wardrobe.
Exactly.
So I am deep in the 14th century right now, and I've always been very persona based. And I was a Viking for a long time, and I did a lot of Viking stuff, or early period. And I should say early period because it's very much the history. You don't have all the like late period. You're like, I'm 1452, and you can get 15 documents about it and get down to 25 effigies and know exactly what it is. Vikings were like, well, we had this helmet in this 100 years and this helmet in this 100 years. And so you're really kind of either early period or you're Norse or Celtic. And I read all the sagas. I read all the Viking and a lot of my favorite thing is the Rheingold or the Volsung saga, the story of the Wasslings and Sigurfrith and the dragon. That lit my soul on fire, to say the least. And that was what I did for over a decade, to the point of, if you wanted to reign with Uther, you wore the Vikings. Otherwise, we just don't necessarily reign together for a long time, because that's what I was passionate about. And then I took a really large injury and shattered my ankle. And when I did that, I had a lot of mobility problems. And then I had a kind of a crisis of faith. I wanted my shield to somewhat match my Viking armor and all that. And I could no longer dance around the field with my small 24 by 25 square kind of early period-esque and early period-ish shield. It's not the best documentable. At the time, I had it in a book. It wasn't the best documentation. But, and so then I had this kind of 2 or 3 year gap where I didn't really have a great grasp of what period I was trying to do. So I was trying to find armor and clothing that excited me. And then I had the Battle of Nations experience. And then in the Battle of Nations, you're getting hit by 7-pound steel pole arms and things. And you learn how amazing that 14th century armor can be. And that's what I was fighting in. And I just I went from, in a lot of ways, not liking the 14th century because some of, let's say, my early SCA nemesis were 14th century, and we had a lot of loggerheads and what chivalry was. And I was of the heroic branch, and I was beating on my chest and doing a toast and a boast in the hall and doing that. And Lull's book on chivalry is boring, knock it off. And to coming full circle, and one of my best friends is Scott Frappier, and him bringing me the one true period, which is the 14th century. And that's what I'm doing this now. And my OCD generally lasts for a long time, and I've got a lot of garb from Black Swan these days. So I think this will be around for a while.
So on that, are you the king who wouldn't touch blue fabric?
Yes. And there's a great story. Do you know Viscount Ragnar, Sir Ragnar? You know Rags?
Yep.
So
Yes.
When I came over to Australia, his living room in Mortonville was like Never Never Land. All the kids would show up. You'd go into his living room. David New York was there. These are old legends of Lochac, by the way, Vera. And we would go in there and like everyone would sit in the couch and no one would get up to make a cuppa because you had to make the whole room a cuppa. I mean, there were all these games going on. And Ragnar, who tells a better story than Ragnar, right? Ragnar told great stories. And so then he tells us, and I was a very impressionable young Viking lad. And that was my first reign, learning my Vikings, looking for some Viking chops. And I hadn't gone through all the sagas. And he tells the story of the wife that wouldn't give her hair to her husband for the bowstring because she insulted him. And he talks about this whole thing of this Viking saga, how the hero dies because he couldn't get a bowstring together and he gets killed, right? And he goes, but what's very interesting about this is he was wearing a blue tunic. And if you look at all the sagas, all the guys that die, they're doing great. So they put that blue tunic on. And I was like, really? And he's like, Uther, that's how it is. And I'm like, no blue tunics for me, out. And like literally the number of times somebody tried to give me a blue tunic where I'm like, can't wear that. I would give it away. I would do something else. I mean, no blue tunic. Yeah, so rags, you have rags to get that be the color of my culture. That was from rags.
Right.
Now I kind of want to change our crown clothes from red to blue.
That has been consistent. That is not going away. I did wear a blue cotardie because Edward gave me one. Because my brother-in-law, by the way, who was the Polish Avenger when he met my sister, she converted him to the true Viking faith, and his whole household is Viking and Varangian and Aiden. They have this amazing destination household with amazing period and fires. I mean, it is a breathtaking camp that has amazing period pieces. I mean, they have more laurels than they do fighters in that camp, and they have several dukes, and the laurels are more talented. I'm telling you, they're black belt ninja laurels in that camp they're forging camp. They do, I mean, the amount of art they pour out. And so the Viking experience there is amazing. And so Edward was converted. And so I have a little of someone's early reign garb. So I did wear a blue cotardie once. I felt a little dirty doing it though. I was a little unsure. I thought I might waiting for an arrow to hit me in the back or take me out. I just a little twitchy.
So we've been asking the royalty of the kingdoms that we've been interviewing what your favorite story to tell is around a campfire, because so many experiences happen in the SCA. There's always that one that you kind of go, oh, that's my drunken story that I tell when I'm being, naughty.
So this didn't exactly happen in the SCA, but so I own a poleaxe and I had borrowed a friend's truck so that I could get some repair work done on my car. I was going to need to be in a shop for the week because my friend was flying out of town. So I dropped them at the airport and I go home, and it's about 6 o'clock in the morning. I get home and I climb back into bed because it's 6 o'clock in the morning and I'm going back to sleep. And I hear a car pull up and a door open. And I'm like, that's weird for 6 o'clock in the morning. And then I hear the sound of a reciprocating saw fire up and the sound of metal being cut. And I realize, I leap out of bed and I look out, and sure enough, this man is lying in my driveway, half underneath this truck, cutting the catalytic converter out. Because you can sell them for scrap metal because they have platinum and precious metals in them. You get like $100 for it, and it's like $1,100 to replace it, right? So I'm like, oh no, this is not happening. So I go tearing out of my house and I grab the poleaxe on the way. So I go running outside with an axe. And I'm like, what do you think you're doing? He jumps up and he ran, dove in the car, peeled out, gone. But I'm like, that probably wasn't a normal reaction to that. So that is my drunken story.
That's a great story. I'm going to tell a serious story because I cannot top the funny story, right? And this is one of my favorite stories about chivalry. So I came to knighthood hard. I was a wild young man, probably deserved to come to it hard. I was a pain in the ass, totally own it now. I'm 50, I can look back and go, pretty wild. I get why they were a little worried. And I couldn't get knighted for love or money, and I won crown twice unbelted. And that also, by the way, elicited another change in the kingdom because there was a bunch of us who were doing early period things, and we had a very narrow vision of what chivalry was. And like 5 people got offered out of one council, which just doesn't happen, as you know, normally. And that was because, well, if Uther's going to get knighted and he's doing this weird Viking thing, these other guys could. I had a gentleman who was not my biggest fan. As a matter of fact, my biggest detractor in council. And to say that as you're younger, somebody in higher esteem, you know, has a little power over you, or maybe have that. And so that was a little hard to have somebody who I once was friends with, who, you know, then later I wasn't his guy. He comes into my vigil, and I'll use his name because it's a very positive story. Philip Harford Exeter walks into my vigil, and my breath catches. And I think, oh God, here we go. And I'm trying to brace up. And he saw the look in my face and goes, no, Uther, I need you to understand something. You know, we have been at odds, and that I wasn't for your elevation. But tomorrow, when the king makes you knight, we start all over. I'm going to hug you as a brother. And as far as I'm concerned, you're a knight until you disprove otherwise. And I mean that. Please don't think it's trite. And that's all I wanted to tell you tonight. And I hope you have a great vigil. And to say that he was an amazing detractor who had an amazing fan after that, because Phil was not the most philosophical, or he was never known as the wordy Hallmark knight sending out greeting cards. That was not him. And to have him come to me and be so poignant and powerful in his words never left me. And it's something I've tried to share with squires and other people about the power of the commonality of what we do and chivalry and the orders, and that even though it's a made-up game, it's a pretty awesome made-up game that really has a lot of weight and impact on our lives. And I love that story.
My advice at a vigil was, I was a student, and my peer said to me, you have to go to this vigil and give this person like some advice. And I was like, what am I going to give to a peer? Because I'm new into this society. And you may notice I don't sound like majority of Australians. Right? So I came from Ireland and Scotland, and I walked into this Laurel vigil, and I told her not to eat the yellow snow.
Not eat the what?
Yellow snow. Don't eat the yellow snow, right? And she kind of
great advice.
She just looked at me and said thank you. And then when it was my turn to have a vigil, I was told not to eat the yellow snow 15 times.
Awesome.
So be careful what you say. It has to be wordy and have weight, I reckon.
Oh, that was a good one.
So, Queen Vera, before these interviews, did you have much knowledge of Lochac?
A little bit. Yeah, there's always been such a strong tie, and Lochac was still a principality of the West when I started playing in the West. And it's always kind of been my mecca. Truthfully, it's been I'm like, I gotta go to Lochac, because people would travel. His Majesty was one. He would take his squires and they would go, and I would hear these amazing stories about visiting and the hospitality, and I'm just like, I have to go at some point. And I have yet to do it. I think once COVID restrictions lift, I'm gonna have to increase it, push it a little higher up on the to travel list. I think at this point I probably have the air miles that I could just jet on down there, no problem. But I know bits and pieces. I know a few people who live down there, or who did live down there at one point in time. I've met a few folks. I've been to Penzic and ended up meeting, Wee Brucey and a few other people. I was given a tiny little koala bear that lived in my car, clipped onto the AC vent for years. And I'd look at it and I'd grin. Yeah, so.
And Your Majesty, you said you lived in our adorable country for 6 months. Is that correct?
Yeah, just a little less than 6 months. Yeah, I was over there many times. And I loved it. It was a great place. I also spent a lot of time with Alfara Attica, and I was in Sydney, living in Newtown, and then I would go up to Mortonville or up to Newcastle and hang out. I didn't. A lot of people liked Canberra. That's right off the side of Sydney, right? I like Newcastle way more. And then I also went out to wine country and did in Adelaide in that area. And I thought that was beautiful, beautiful. And what I remember most about that is we went for a horseback ride and wild flocks of parrots are flying overhead. And it was like a picture postcard moment. And I was 20, when I won Crown, I went over there. I was in my like early 20s, 25, I guess, or mid 20s. And a little younger than that. But anyways, I had this amazing experience. That was the first time of international travel. So my first time really going anywhere internationally was over to see you guys. And I loved it there. Other than a restaurant takes forever in Australia and they don't talk to you. They sit you down. They don't give you a drink. I was like, come on, guys. And they're like, and Alfar would go, calm down, Uther, calm down. They're going to bring you a beer. It'll be okay. They're going to get to you. So that was, you know,
you foreigners who's a grog, is that correct?
That is very true. Grogus Rex. Had a good time with those boys. I spent a lot of time in shenanigans in there. There are some very embarrassing stories that are pre-selfie and cell phones, and I'm very blessed that they're before those days.
So that you know, Your Majesty Vera, the Grogs was a fighting unit that came from the barony of Mortonville, and if you did something spectacular, either in a negative or a positive way, you were given a grog name.
So did they tell you how they got me?
No.
They got me brilliantly. So here's what happens. We go to Mortonville. We go to whole fighter practice. I tear these guys up, right? And I light these guys up, and we're doing stuff, and I'm on the Viking and stuff. And they're like, we'll show Mr. Fancy Pants King. He thinks he can crush everything and do everything. He's like, we're going to get him drunk, right? And I'm a big guy. I'm 6'6". I can drink a lot, right? So 2 grogs basically sharked me and got me doing a shot with them at this pub, right? Now, mind you, I've got a beautiful girl on my arm. I'm hanging out. We're laughing. It's this whole great night. Oh, I'll do a shot with you, sure. And I end up doing like 15 shots with each of them. I was obliterated. I mean, I am done. I am puking drunk coming out of the thing. I have a chunder out in the street, right? The next morning is Coronet. And I'm like, oh God. And so I'm trying to pull myself back together. And like, I think it was Kurgan takes pity on me. And I go, I just gotta get some grease. I just gotta get something in my stomach so I can function. He's like, I got you. I'm like, just take me to like McDonald's and just get lots of fries. And I go to McDonald's and I get all these big things of fries and I cram them down myself, drink a bunch of water, and I show up and I'm supposed to fight all the buys and do all this. And their goal was to lay me out so I could not take the field. I put my armor on and I went out and fought. And I've never fought so conservatively in all my life because I have no energy, I have no gas in the tank. And all these knights who had not met me previously on the trip or seen any of my other fighting, they're making commentary. How efficient was style and all that. Now that was me hungover. I could do nothing. I didn't want to move. And Kurgan made me break out and just get you, because he was the guy who was hot and he won that tournament. And he was my one real hard fight of the day. And then I recovered by the end of the day, had some real food later. But that is how the grogs laid the king out. They basically sharked me with shots. But my revenge was both of those boys stayed in their brooms with the light off and did not show up till revel late that night because they were so hungover. And I showed up, what's up, guys? We drinking again? That's the folly of youth. Yeah. So we broke each other, kind of mutual destruction, 2 against 1. I lost, kind of.
Oh, dear. Oh, so you obviously know our country. Is there something that you could say to our populace, both of you, about what you think, how we've matured as one of the children of the West Kingdom and what you think we do well? There you go.
I think, so I've not been to Lochac in a long time, but yeah. I do still have Australian friends and things. And I thought Lochac's reenactment and their persona and the things they did were amazing. And for people that geographically are way more spread out, and because it's much harder, you know, you have Sydney, these population centers, but they're way more spread out. I thought the community you guys kept as a kingdom, or as a principality, and then later as a kingdom, was outstanding. And your esprit de corps and the Knights of Lochac, or the Laurels of Lochac, and the level of passion you bring to what you do was just amazing. And it was something, I mean, all kingdoms have a personality, but you did all of this really hardcore reenactment, all the other things, with a level of frivolity that was amazing. I mean, you have Aggro, the Ninja Turtle Knight. I mean, I don't know how you guys have both sides of the coin, but you do. And that is truly an amazing thing to be part of, because there's all levels going on and you're welcome at any level, it seems. What a great place to be. I really, honestly, if I could tomorrow go to a Roni festival easily, I would just do it. I mean, I still have amazingly fond memories of Australia.
Yeah, my interactions for the most part have been at Inter-Kingdom Wars, with a small group that have been able to travel, and I'm always blown away at how much fun you all are,
Yes.
and just how welcoming and inviting. You know, Gregory of Loxmorn actually reached out because he is our eternal guardsman, and you know, Kenny the Wonder Squire, or you know, guardsman, is still around, and he's actually with me now. I took selfies of him today or yesterday, you know, so just the frivolity, and it's something I love. You know, that's how you end up with the crazy stories that people tell years and years down the road, and you know, hey, do you remember that time where we all loaded in the back of that car and then I mean, just you end up with these great stories, and everyone's laughing, and you bond, and you bring new people in, and you get them hooked. You get them wanting to come back and enjoy those experiences with you.
Thank you so much.
I don't know if you know or not. I don't mean to interrupt you, but you know, Theodoric, he's still on the throne, correct?
Yes, he's your grandson, is he not?
Yeah, he's my grand squire. Yes. The lineage is strong. Oh, sorry, got excited.
He did say to say hello to you when we interviewed him.
I would love to see the Wookiee. I would love to see the Wookiee and drink with the Wookiee again. He is so much fun. That was his West Kingdom like grog name, the Wookiee. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very appropriate.
Yes.
Your Majesty.
I have a story about him. When I was elevated to the crown of Lochac, he was from Mordenvale, and my lord was from Mordenvale as well. So they took it upon themselves to dress in Mordenvale colors at our Invest, and they bought out the checkered red and green school fabric, like for school uniforms, through the whole of the city, so that they could wear Celtic garb. And I was just in awe. I thought, this is amazing. But Theodoric went a step further and decided to wear a great kilt in the traditional form, let's put it that way.
Oh.
And he sat right down the center of the aisle of when we were king and queen, and basically did this Sharon Stone to us for the whole of our Invest Lord. Just with
that's so brilliant. That is brilliant.
On his face, and my lord was just like, I'm gonna kill him. He just like kept laughing through the serious parts. I was like, yeah, once for Mordenvale, always for Mordenvale.
Were you able to maintain a straight face? Like,
not the whole time. I kept going, oh. And it just made him worse.
And it wasn't just the crown, it was everybody up in the dais that had this view.
So I think I need to plan some mischief when he steps down from the COVID reign.
I think on the COVID reign, go ahead.
No. If you have one last story.
Oh, so will you ask about plans of mischief for stepping down from the COVID reign?
Yes.
I think her message will expand further, but I think the one thing we're really talking about is having it be a blowout event where Do we really need peerage meetings for the first one back? Maybe not. Maybe we just need to have a good time. Maybe the kingdom should buy 2 or 3 roast pigs and have the different baronies roast them on the Eric. Maybe the kingdom, we cannot buy alcohol, should encourage some cocktail mixing contests that aren't royally sponsored. Maybe we should do everything we can to make that first event a blowout good time with the least amount of business, the most amount of fun, a minimal amount of court, just enough to make people laugh. And that's what we've talked about. Your Majesty, you have some other
That
ideas.
is, yep, we have talked extensively about how to have a massive party and welcome people back to in-person events. And I'm loving the pig roast, you know, everyone eat together and really celebrate our community coming back together again. It's going to be a blast.
Giant potluck on the Eric, right? Bring your tables out, throw them down, community, tell stories, poke fun at each other. That is really what's on our mind right now. We really want people to their first experience back, to bring them right back to why we do this.
And it is such an important thing, particularly after the last 7 months. For Lochac, we are starting to go back to face-to-face events, and we have had some run, and it's made such a difference for those groups that have been able to do that.
All events are canceled through January 31st here still. So we're a ways out from being able to see each other in person again.
Yeah, ours is very much state-based at this time, and lots of social distancing and all of the requirements involved. But even people are enjoying just being able to be in a physical space with others.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it is, as much of a pain as it has been that blessing where it has brought people closer, and that recognition of, we love this, we love doing this, and the people is what it's about.
Yep, exactly.
I think for us also, our first spin back, we're looking at doing a crown of coronation event where we have a big tournament on Saturday, coronation on Sunday. We're talking about that. And to be honest, most other kingdoms, because they're on a 2 reign per year cycle, most of the known world that I know of, they'd already got their crown off for the spring or the first one of the year. We were like a couple weeks away from it. So we've been on the throne for almost a year now. And
you won at October Crown last year, and we stepped up the first weekend in January of 2020.
Yeah, so we've been crown prince, and we're still going to January, and then maybe sometime after that we get crowned, because just because that lift comes off, it doesn't mean that we're open to have public events. And so we don't want the populace have been very gracious. We don't want them to be bored with us. And so most other kingdoms were able to do some virtual transfer. Felix and his wonderful lady, they got to do, step up, and some people, and that is the hardest thing, is we want the game to continue, and we don't want to be seen as holding onto the crown. And that's one of the reasons why we've talked about trying to have it make the event like the crown, the coronation. Let's do it big, but also you're probably tired of us, and we know it. We get it.
No, I think there are definitely a lot of kingdoms from all of the crowns that we have spoken to. Mm-hmm. There are quite a few that are in that same position where they have stepped up late 2019, and there are no heirs, and they won then and they stepped up and there are no heirs, and so they are continuing. And when they do talk about the burden of the crown, this is definitely one of those moments that it really hits not only the crown but the populace as a whole.
I will say though that all the crowns have been very, even though it's a long slog, they've all been very passionate about how much the game means to them and how important it is to keep their populace engaged, and to remind them that this is your village, your tribe, your safe place, and that we are all here trying our best to make sure that you know that. So that is been amazing and very heartfelt for all of us. And unfortunately, we've reached the end of this hour. It's very sad to say goodbye to you at the moment. Thank you so much for all the knowledge that you have shared with us. We will try and add links into our conversation about things that have happened in your kingdom so that we can stalk you online. The known world is getting a little bit bigger, but a little bit smaller at the same time. So thank you both very much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having us. This has been just delightful. And when, not if, when I get to Lochac, yeah, we got to have cocktails together.
Oh, absolutely. We have a Roses tea. You need to come to festival.
We should. You guys are fabulous. And getting a little Australian accent, it's been a while. It's a little bit of a fix. I'm jonesing for it again. So thank you, ladies. I love Lochac. You guys are an amazing group of people. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you to everybody who's been watching. We're going on a little bit of a hiatus next weekend. So please like, share, and subscribe to our page. And we will be back on the 9th and 10th of October. So we look forward to seeing everybody then. Thank you very much, Your Majesties.
Bye-bye.